Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Welcome to a special live edition of the Fly With Us podcast. This podcast is bringing the art of conversation, self love, self care, mental health care and protection, life lessons, love lessons, and everything in between. Today, we're going to talk about horticulture and the brain and thriving in the inner city. I'm your girl, Lady Bounce.
And I am Picket Fence.
You got the mindfulness minute?
Yes, I do. I have two pieces too. So there is no happiness like that of being loved in your fellow creatures and feeling that the presence in addition to their comfort. So that's the first part of that. And let me find the second part right quick. To add to that is a quote from Martin Luther King. Life is most persistent and urgent questions is, what are you doing for others? I'll read that again. Life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? Word up.
Word up. I love both of those.
Word. And I thought putting those together would, lead us into show. So joining us today is a very, very special guest, Miss Jasmine Stewart, who is doing work in the community that is well past needed. And we're talking about agriculture, horticulture, and gardening, and taking care of plants too, because that's something that we've talked about before, that me and Lady Bounce are not too green thumb when it comes to that. So help you be able to help us get into that. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. And whenever I hear people say that they can't keep a plant alive, I always know this person needs to learn how to meet needs. This person needs to learn how to meet needs, because each plant has their own specific needs and wants that they require. And it's like all about just learning what this plant needs. So, yeah.
Next time, all you got to do is say my name. You ain't have to be like, you could just put it out there. It's okay.
No, but that's dope. I never heard that before, because I've tried gardening just for flowers outside, during the summertime, and I just put it out there, like they're all just gonna do what they want to do and it'll be cool, but it's never worked. Worked.
A lot of us are good at planting seeds, but often we don't be good at nurturing the seeds in which we plant. We good at planting them and starting them, but as far as walking with them and nurturing them over time, that's where things get a little fuzzy.
Okay. So I saw that you had land and you actually started move from plants to actually gardening food. Is there a big difference in plants and food when it comes to taking care of them?
Not so much, because a regular plant most often can produce seeds and fruit and things like that. Not really. I actually prefer agriculture and producing crops and veggies and stuff versus just regular flowers or gardening. Just because I feel like you get more, like you're actually producing something when you get veggies versus the flowers. Like most often we don't eat flowers. Some people do. There are flowers that are edible, but most often I like to grow things that I can actually use. So yeah.
Now, is it harder work or more involved work when it comes to agriculture versus houseplants?
Absolutely. Your typical houseplant, if anything, is going to be watering it. Some people tend to put their plants outside if it's a nice day. You might have to do like some plant maintenance as far as like pest control and things like that. But when you're actually growing veggies and things like that, you might have to construct some things. It's a lot to it. You have to weed. You constantly pruning. You're constantly like watching over your food from other things that are living outside. So it's a lot to it. It's a lot more laborious for sure. And then and then with houseplants, it's more so most people houseplants are in the home, so it's a controlled environment versus growing veggies outside where you got to worry about the weather, again, pests, other people, things like that.
Now, this is, I think, is a hard thing for me, and it's been hard for me since I was a kid. How dirty do you get?
You know what? I don't even look. pretty dirty, but I don't even look at it as dirty anymore. Like, to me, before I started gardening and farming and things like that, like, there could never be a little piece of dirt on my veggie or a little piece of anything on my veggie. But now, like, I'll go outside, pick a green pepper right out the dirt all on it, rinse it off, eat it, and it's all good. I don't really look at it as dirty. And what's crazy is I like to tell people there's actually certain microorganisms in soil that act as a modern day antidepressant. So when you're touching the soil, it's low-key, like, you're low-key getting those same effects just from touching that soil. So that's probably another reason why I don't look at it as, like, just dirty.
Okay. Because I know for myself, I'm a type of person that doesn't enjoy being dirty. Like, if I spill something on my shirt, I'm probably going to take it off and put it on another shirt.
No, yeah, but I love getting my feet in the dirt, love getting my hands in the dirt, love sweating and stuff now. Like, when I sweat and stuff, it actually makes me feel like I'm exercising. So, yeah.
Yeah, now that I do know about, far as like gardening. Like, I've never successfully gardened food, but I had a job doing lawn maintenance and things like that, landscaping, where I actually just planted the flowers and I would go to the next home and stuff. And it definitely is exercise. Definitely exercise.
For sure.
Yeah, because I know doing the work, they expect you to start before the sun is up. As soon as the break of daylight, and you work until the sun goes down. So it's definitely a workout.
Yeah, it's so many foundational things like that that's in agriculture. Like, before I got into agriculture and stuff, I was never a getting up early type of person. I was never working hard. I was never sweating and doing too much. But because I do farm now, I had to learn to love those things. And it's actually not that bad. It's not that bad.
Now, how did you get started? Is this something that your family's always done, or just something that you just picked up?
So over time, I learned that my family did do a lot of farming and sharecropping throughout our legacy. I didn't know that when I had first started. I had just kind of had a little interest of gardening a little bit, and then COVID had came, and when COVID came, Louisiana State University had offered a free home gardening course. So I was like, okay, I've already had an interest. Let me do this. I get a certificate. If anything, I can use the certificate for something. Ended up completing the course, and then the city of Chartwood and Central State University had threw a program out to the community like, hey, if anybody would love to learn how to farm, we will give you land, we will teach you everything, we will give you all the tools, all the resources, all we need you to do is show up. So once I got done with that first home gardening course, I jumped right into this course. So I kind of went from gardening to farming. Farming kind of led me to livestock. So now I have like chickens and stuff, and I just keep kind of going down further and further down a rabbit hole for real. Now I'm interested in herbalism and herbs and things like that. So I just keep going down the rabbit hole. I just keep going down the rabbit hole.
That's dope, because you don't usually see, especially in today's times, young people of color that are into that. And that's something that we basically were brought here for. And we like, I don't know if it's subconsciously, we like, I'm not doing that no more.
That's exactly what it is. I've been reading this really great book called Farming While Black, and it touches on how the land was the scene of the crime for a lot of us, but it wasn't necessarily the criminal. Like, the land didn't harm us. We got harmed on the land. The land necessarily didn't harm us. But because we had so much trauma surrounding land, it's almost like we want to divorce ourselves from land. Like, we absolutely don't want to be farmers anymore. Like, but one thing I really love, Black people make up 1% of agricultural industry right now. Like, I really love being a young person, female, Black as hell, coming into these spaces, really like reclaiming what is rightfully ours. I really love that. So I really like, whenever I run into somebody like, hey, you might not think you like farming, but let me show you how I do it. I promise I can make it fun for you.
That's real dope. Word up. Because I can't even express how important that is, and I'm proud of you for doing that, because like I said, my thumb is orange, it's not green.
Brown. Kind of pink
So
right
big
now.
ups to you.
Thanks, man. Yeah, yep. And I don't know, like I love farming, but farming really it ties in so many other things. Like a lot of our early civil rights movement started on a farm. A lot of farmers helped groom a lot of our civil rights leaders we know of today. Um, it's really like farming and gardening and stuff is really an act of resistance. And I didn't even know that until, like I said, I started searching more and studying more and learning more. But for Black people, it's no coincidence that we live in high-rise buildings where there aren't any trees or plants or flowers around. Like that's intentionally done. That's intentionally done to keep us from feeling like we are of this earth. So even me bringing gardening to schools and stuff, it's like, no, these kids deserve to be around flowers. These kids deserve to be around plants. These kids deserve to be outside and exploring and things like that. So, yeah.
Or
So, we're talking about, planting and we're actually, but what I guess we're going into winter, if that's what we're gonna call this right now.
If that's what they want to call it.
Right. Because I haven't seen any snow yet, and I'm not mad about that. I'm just saying. So is there a better time of year to like start a garden? Like, is spring better? Is summer better?
Yeah, absolutely. So spring is always best just because the ground is warm. It's a good time for germinating seeds. But Black farmers, one thing we did know how to do was extend that growing season. So we can grow in the wintertime. There are certain things that can grow in the wintertime that are cool weather tolerant. But again, springtime is absolutely best. And one of my farm teachers, he said that Mother's Day, that's typically like the bird call for all farmers across the world, like, hey, it's time to put your seeds in the ground or at least get them started. So Mother's Day weekend is like usually the start.
or now I know that I remember hearing as a kid, and even in school, I took radio even in high school, that our teacher always talked about the farmer's almanac. Is that something that you use, and is that important to know when it's time to plant and harvest?
Timing is everything. Timing is everything. I actually just got familiar with the Farmer's Almanac this year. I don't use it much, but what's so interesting to me about it is how much astrology and the stars and things like that play into account into considering time and weather and things like that. Like a lot of early farmers would look at the stars to know when it would be a good time to start, or to figure out what was going on with the weather. But I don't use it too often, but I probably will in the future.
And I'm glad you brought up the stars and watching the stars, because in our society, the way it's evolved in the last few hundred years, that people tend to look down on people who watch the stars and astrology and things like that, because they think of it as some type of idol worship. But our people especially, it wasn't that we worship the stars. We use the stars as a guide. And even if people that don't believe in a higher power, people who are just astrologers, they recognize that during certain times of year, there's certain elements that make up the earth, that are certain elements that come to the earth. So that's basically how they develop astrology. If you're born around a certain time of year, there are going to be elements that you're exposed to that people won't be exposed to if they're born in a different part of time of the year. And that brings me to my next question. You are also I saw a post where you said you don't advertise as much, but you are also a reader.
Yes, I love tarot reading. I'm actually very good at it. The only reason I kind of slowed down on it was just over the winter time, just not having enough emotional space for the public. I was just kind of going through my own thing. So it's like, I can't really be going through my own thing and trying to worry about what's going on with you and this person and that person. It just wasn't a good time to make myself that accessible. But I've been thinking about opening my books lately because a lot of my clients is like, hey girl, we still need you. We still need to talk and stuff. So I'm thinking about opening my schedule back up for that, but loved reading. Absolutely love tarot. And I love how you hit at excuse me, a lot of times certain things our society kind of demonizes or makes negative of certain things that are indigenous to our culture. Like tarot reading is very indigenous to the African culture. Reading in general and divination is very indigenous to our culture. Some of our ancestors was using tarot cards, but some of them was using cowrie shells or runes or, all types of things. So
bones.
Bones, right? I've heard people divining with tea leaves. I've heard of people divining with animal parts. I've heard of people divining with coins, like so many things, but they would divine to get information. Our folks was now out here walking around blind. They knew very much so what was going on. They knew to divine to know what the weather would be. They knew to divine to see if two people should get married. They knew to divine to see if harm was on the way. So these things, super indigenous to our people. Super indigenous to our people.
Word up.
And just to piggyback off of that, a lot of times that these things that have now become shunned, like you guys were talking about, our grandmothers have been doing that for years. Like I remember my grandmother calling me in the middle of the day talking about, I'm seeing fish, who pregnant? Well, it ain't me, grandma.
Yes,
and then we
like that.
Together at family gatherings, and grandma looking around with the ring, hanging over people's stomachs, talking about somebody having a baby. I'm like, well, it's not me. I have my two, and that's that. But that's kind of like the same thing. But now, I remember like when the movie Princess and the Frog came out, and they were talking about the shadow man, and they tried to take something that was actually natural and pure, and kind of trying to like demonize it a little bit and make him a villain because it was a Disney movie and there has to be a villain.
Right.
So, like the uproar that came from that was just, it was massive. And I found, myself and Pickett as well, on the internet, kind of like trying to educate people and bring them along, and people who look like us who should know better, like y'all know what this is.
I think it's so
trying to get them to understand this has always been us. So thank you for that.
I think I love telling people this, that how the typical like fortune teller aesthetic, like it's a woman or a person with a turban on their head, like where do you think they got that from? They got that from Black women. Black women were the only ones wearing turbans and hair wraps on their head historically. Like they stole that from us. They got that aesthetic from us. So again, yes, these things are very deeply rooted and indigenous to our culture, for sure. And I love how you just mentioned, I didn't even think about that, the ring on the string. That was an early pendulum. Like pendulums are used all the time for divination, but that was an early pendulum they were using. Yeah.
Damn,
definitely.
My grandma used to do all that stuff. We used to think she was crazy, but she was always right. So we had to just go, okay, I ain't arguing.
A lot of our grandmas was doing the same thing. They were doing things that were necessary to survive. Point blank period. And they wasn't calling it the same things that we call it now. Like they wasn't calling it, divining and things like that back. Or maybe they were, but it was the same thing.
Yeah, it definitely was the same thing. And I think that's what putting names on it is what's allowed people to demonize those particular things that were natural to us. Natural instinct. That's what it was. It was natural instinct, something that we have always done for thousands and thousands of years. And I try not to disrespect anybody on the show, but I think that as we became more involved in Christianity, we've moved away from that. And because they teach us to basically not to love yourself. I think that it is an action of not to love what you already naturally were. Like I said, I don't want to disrespect anybody. If that's what you do, you do. You know what I'm saying? But I don't like when people demonize other cultures for things that are natural to them.
Yeah, I feel the exact same way. I tell people all the time, I wish Black people could celebrate and express their culture the same as Chinese people and Mexican people and, all these other people. Like, you'll never see a Mexican that doesn't know about a quinceañera or sombrero or things like that. But most of us are African and we've never heard of African drum, never had African food, never celebrated African holiday or things like that. And it's kind of sad to me. It really is sad to me.
It is. And speaking, I'm glad you brought that up because we talked about when it premiered, High on a Hog. And
love High on a Hog.
And not realizing that how much African culture as well as African food has influenced this country, how it's fed this country.
Yep, a lot of foods that we eat today made it here via the transatlantic slave trade, via our hair, braided in our hair. So black eyed peas were one of those things. Black eyed peas are not native to the U.S. They're native to Africa. And again, how they made their way over here, our folks know that they knew that they were going somewhere. They didn't know where they was going, but they knew they had to eat. So what they did was they put seeds and beans and things that they could regrow, braid them in their hair. And when they got here, they planted them. That's how we have certain foods, okra, black eyed peas. My mind is going blank, but it's so many of them. So many.
Rice,
yes, for sure, rice.
So
I thought it was real dope. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
You were talking about rice. I like the episode in High and the Hog where they talked about there's a particular rice that is only grown in I think it was North Carolina. That was indigenous to Africa, and it can still to this day can only be grown in that area.
I've never had experience growing rice. They say it's pretty difficult. You have to have like the right. It needs to be extremely, extremely hot, and something else. I've never tried it, but yeah, they say it's really difficult to grow here. But again, because it's not indigenous here, it's not native to here.
So you mentioned earlier about growing stuff in the winter. So what kinds of things can we grow in the winter? Like
collard greens.
Wait a minute now.
You said the magic word for her.
I know. Yeah, and I love that about collard greens. Like collard greens is a really strong food, not only for its nutritional content, but its ability to withstand harsh conditions. Really, it reminds me of Black people. Like we can withstand harsh conditions, so can collard greens. But yeah, collards, kale, spinach.
Making a list. Go ahead.
And I think that's kind of like the lettuces family, but that's pretty much it. Our hardy greens, really.
Which are very, very important to eat greens every day if possible.
Yep.
Definitely.
For sure.
So how did you get involved with teaching in schools, agriculture in schools?
So this is 2022. In 2020, I claimed it. I was in the middle of my home gardening class. COVID was going on. This is when we couldn't get toilet paper, all that good stuff from the stores. I'm thinking that food about to be next. We ain't gonna get food. So something really like struck in me like, no, girl, your responsibility is to be the one to teach us how to grow food. Like you're already on the path. And I just claimed it then, like, you know what, next year I'm going to be teaching in the school. Like, I don't know how, I don't know which school, but I'm going to do it. A good friend of mine, Deja, she works for Scholars of Hope at Fairview. She had threw it out there to the community that they were looking for teachers and after school program teachers, enrichment teachers, things like that. And I just hit her up like, hey, you know, I've never taught before, but this is what I do. She thought it was a great idea. I interviewed. They loved the idea. They loved the concept of having a garden at the school. And next thing I know, I was up there teaching. And what's crazy is most schools, I don't know if this is like a law or anything, that maybe this was in place when schools were built, but almost about 80% of schools that I visit have a garden already. So it's like, why don't we have teachers? If we already have a garden, why don't we have teachers here? I didn't get it. But ever since I started with Fairview, a lot of other schools have been hitting me up like, hey, we would love for you to come in. We also already have a garden. We need some help with these kids. Please come. So it's kind of been like the floodgates that opened up since then. I'm trying to figure out how I can balance it all.
That's dope.
Yeah.
That's real dope. You also make different ointments and tinctures. Now, was that something you did before the agriculture, and are you still doing that?
Before I got heavy into the gardening and stuff, I was kind of sniffing my nose around herbalism. I love messing around with herbs. I thought I was gonna go down the line of starting a dispensary, like growing marijuana, opening up a dispensary that may still be on the horizon. I don't know. But I started messing around with herbs that would relax us, because we as Black people, we live very stressful lives. Very stressful, very traumatic, very painful. And we usually don't have any options. Like, we tend to self-medicate, which looks like drug abuse, things of that nature. So I love kind of bringing that old school alternative back of, no, there's other ways for us to relax. There's other herbs for us to use outside of cannabis. There's other herbs for us to use, to deal with certain things. And I love using the hemp plant. Historically, people always have used the hemp plant to relax and things of that nature. I figured out a formula to make it into a body butter. And I don't know, my customers all say it helps them with sleep, it helps them relax, it helps them to calm down. So that's where we at.
Okay. So yeah, I'm gonna need an invoice sent to my inbox.
Got you.
My life is set up. I just
yeah. Like I said, I just really like to give us alternatives. And then with a lot of times, some of the disparities that hit us as Black people, they're often seen in like the medical field, education, crime, things like that. So a lot of times we can't afford to go to the doctor if we do have problems, which leads us to trying to figure it out ourselves. So again, I just like to help people figure out some safe alternatives.
Yeah, and you mentioned not being able to afford to go to the doctor. Another thing that we don't like to mention and talk about, it's fear of the doctor. Every time I go to the doctor, he gonna give me a pill. They gonna put me on some other medicine. I can't afford that medicine.
Yeah.
So we definitely have a need in our community for things that are more natural.
And a lot of our
as a teacher, I'm always trying to like talk to these kids about the self-medicating with the weed and trying to explain to them that this weed you smoking isn't really weed, and how your brain is not ready and fully developed for the stuff you putting in it. Like it ain't even finished being together first. So that's definitely, some education that's needed for our young people too.
Yeah, I feel for our young people because I don't know, it's just like we didn't grow up the same. Like the things that they deal with, the pressures, the all those things, like we just didn't have those things kind of growing up. And a lot of our young people are self-medicating at a very early age, and it's not even just regular old weed anymore. It's all types of things out here that some stuff I don't even know about, So yeah, giving them options, and giving them stuff to do. A lot of our youth is kind of spiraling out of control because they don't have anything to do.
Facts.
Yep.
Big facts.
Yep.
So with all the work that you do, what is something that you do for self-care?
That's a toughie. I'm actually I'm trying to find a balance now. I feel like I've been responsible since a youngin'. Like when you kind of the oldest daughter in a Black family, we know how that goes. You kind of turn into the second mom. So right now, I meditate. In the summertime when it's a lot more warm, I love going camping. Love going to cabins, journaling, talking, crying. Whatever I feel like I need to do. I know a lot of people when they say meditate, they always think of this like super quiet, calm thing, and it's just you. Meditation doesn't always have to be that. Meditation can be movement. Meditation can be dance. It can be song. It can be painting. It can be a lot of things. So like whatever I feel called to do in that moment.
Word up. Yeah, that's my form of meditation, is walking meditation. I love to get out and just walk, especially if it's in nature. I know a few years ago I used to go walking on a track, but this year me and our daughter, we started saying let's walk on every park or that we could find, or every trail that we could find. So we started picking a different one every day, and it was just like so freeing. Especially being from here, we're seeing places that we don't usually go to.
Right. Yeah, and you know what? Humans are kind of hardwired to find like restoration in nature. Like we're just hardwired that way. So I love when people say like, yeah, they're stressed out. Oh, I want to go be by some water. You should. That's exactly what you need to do.
That's me.
Yeah. That's exactly what you need to go do. Go be by some water so you can calm down. So yeah. It's so crazy because we really already be knowing what to do. It's just a matter of like listening to ourselves. Right?
Or not necessarily, listening to ourselves is a thing, but I think for us as women, we got to give ourselves permission to do those things. We spend so much time taking care of everything and everybody else. You mentioned being, the oldest sibling and having to take care of everybody else. So now as an adult, you're conditioned that everybody else comes first. So we have to tell ourselves, it's okay if you go meditate. It's okay if you go read. And we like, I don't have time. But if somebody called you and said, hey, Jazz, can you give me a ride? You got time to do that.
Exactly. I'll never forget one of my mentors. I will always be like, oh, I don't have time for that. I don't have time for this. And one day she sat me down. She said, what's more important to you? What's so important that you can't show up for yourself? And that was the thing that kind of changed for me. Like, you're right. There's nothing else more important to me. If I'm not here, this other thing can't get done. If I'm not here, these people can be taken care of. If I'm not here, there ain't gonna be no products made. Like, I have to take care of myself first. But again, giving ourselves permission. Sometimes, not even sometimes, a lot of the times we as Black women, we get caught up in that mothering role, and we love to mother so much. We mother other people's kids, our neighbors, our friends, our family members, everybody that ain't our kids. Like, we just go into that. So,
like, we're too attached to our cape and we're afraid to put it down.
Yep.
It's okay to put it down sometimes.
Yep. But I'm finding a balance with that. I ain't about to sit here and act like I got it all figured out, because I am finding a balance, but I am a lot better at being like, hey, I need a minute. I need 30 minutes. I need an hour. I need time by myself. I'm going to run here real quick type deal.
And I'm glad you said that, because that's the main part of our show, is that we don't have it all figured out, but we have taken steps to start figuring it out, and we want people to go on this journey with us, and that's why we call it Fly With Us. First, love yourself. You can't pour from an empty cup, so you have to put into yourself so that you are able to do the things like you're doing with the community, the things that Lady Bounce is being an intervention specialist and helping out students to become more for the next love of their life. So it's a step-by-step thing, and we need more people. Hopefully more people will get involved in that, so that we can all take this journey together, become better, and heal from the many, many traumas that we have.
Yeah, and you know what? I don't know. Well, for me, I really came to this point of, if we want things to be better, like, we have to be the people that make it better. Like, if our communities are trash, that ain't nobody else's responsibility but ours. Like, we cannot be mad at nobody else. We can't look to nobody else. We really have to sit and be like, okay, what have I done? Like, yeah, our youth is out of control right now. And that's one reason that made me be like, okay, who's going to step up and be there for them? Who's going to step up and support them? Who's going to step up and care for them? Who's going to show them the way? Like, so often we're just tossed away and thrown away and discarded. Like, when are we going to stop letting that be our norm? When are we going to stop throwing people away? When are we going to, intervene? So if everybody in our community could just, you know what I'm saying, be like, hey, I'm going to be responsible for this. I'm going to be responsible for this. Or I'm going to be responsible for that. We will actually see so much change and progression in our communities. But we planting the seeds, I guess. We planting the seeds. So that's all we can do.
Word up. We are running short on the time, but before we get out of here, definitely want you to come back. We're going to be doing a series in March for women in business and all the things that women go through to edify women, because years ago, 2016, I think, when Hillary Clinton was running for president, I was telling people, and people didn't want us, and I was like, yeah, it's time for women to take a lead. Not this woman.
Yeah.
Not this woman, but definitely for women. And that's what's one of the things that sparked me doing the show, because at first the show was Lady Bounce and A Slate were doing the show, but A Slate, she works hard and does so many things that she wasn't able to keep up with the schedule, and because she has so much other stuff going on. And then we got Kryptonite, who also was very busy, and that's how I ended up feeling it. First, I was just the producer of the show, but when I came up with the show, it's because I felt like it was time for women to have a voice, because it's time for women to lead, because women, first of all, are the birth of everything. They are the mothers of our society. So why shouldn't they be the ones speaking and leading for us? So we are going to do a big series in March, and we definitely want you to come back for that. We're going to probably do a 4-part series and with panels, So we definitely want you to come back and do that.
I would love to. And can y'all please start making y'all show over an hour? Because I had watched a few of the episodes and I was wishing they was longer. Specifically the episode with the guy, he was your cousin and he was like a love advocate.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Can y'all, I was waiting for a part 2. So if y'all take suggestions, please make the show longer, please.
Okay, definitely. Yeah, that was a real good show. Like I said,
Yeah.
On that show we met each other through the 23and.com, and since then we have really like built on a relationship and supporting each other and just making that family connection. Because like we said on the show, is that in our community, in the Black community, is like we don't have that dynasty ingrained in us. And that's how these wealthy families do. I mean, watching the I don't know if you've seen it, but we watched Dope Sick a few weeks ago about the opioid crisis.
Okay.
And this family, even before they got into opioids, this family was one of the most dominant families in the country. They had several museums, several business besides pharmaceutical, and it was a family business. They ate dinner together on once a month and discussed where their business was going, with even not just the brothers, like brothers, uncles, cousins, nephews, all together. And we don't have that dynasty when it comes to our community.
Yeah, and you know what? I was just reading about this. They said, I can't remember what book it was, but it was like, our trauma prevents us from thinking future. Our trauma prevents us from thinking about our grandkids or great grandkids. Like, we don't see that far. We can see our lifetime, if that, but oftentimes we can't see 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 generations down the line like other races are afforded to. So again, our trauma, we've got to deal with it. We've got to. Yep.
Word up. So let's get into one of my favorite part of the show. Well, my favorite part of the show. Doom, 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 doom. Brain science.
Okay.
I know, I laugh too every single time. It's hilarious. So you mentioned this actually earlier on one of your questions, which is so funny because you didn't know what the brain science was and what we pulled up. So this is 6 ways that gardening easily improves your mental health. Gardening has long been considered a therapeutic hobby for well-being. However, science is just now beginning to back up the benefits of getting your hands dirty with research. Mental health professionals have even started incorporating gardening into treatment for substance abuse and alcoholism. They're calling it horticultural therapy, and it has proven to be helpful as an intervention for many mental health conditions, including PTSD, dementia, intellectual disabilities, and cognitive behavior therapy. As well as it's been particularly effective in decreasing depression and anxiety. So whether you have the space to plant a sprawling garden or you only have room for a few plants on a balcony, you can still reap the benefits of gardening and yard work. So here are some more reasons. Exposure to nature. Science confirms what we intuitively know, that just being outside benefits your mental well-being. Everything from stress hormones and heart rate to brainwaves and protein makers is positively impacted when you spend time in nature. If you live in an urban area, just hanging out in any green space, such as a park, has very similar benefits, which we know. So, more sunlight. Another advantage of gardening is that you get a bigger dose of sunlight. More sunshine means better mental health and more happiness in general. Sunshine greatly impacts your mental health. Surprisingly, your day could include uncomfortably hot temperatures, thick air pollution, or even rain clouds, but that doesn't necessarily affect your mood. If you're getting enough sun, your emotions should remain relatively stable. What?
Yep.
So here's I like this one. Improved concentration. There are several theories that attempt to explain the positive effect that being outdoors has on mental capabilities. One theory is called attention restoration theory, or ART. It proposes that exposure to nature is not only relaxing, but can also improve focus and concentration. So nature has the capacity to restore your attention after you have had a whole day of mental exercise, as I like to call it. I don't want to use the word stress. We'll say mental exercise. Gardening teaches you mindfulness, which is what Pickett was talking about with his walking meditation.
Yes.
Gardening can help you learn mindfulness and incorporate it into your life. You might enjoy reading lessons from a garden about the wisdom that has been gathered from centuries of gardening. And this particular book and article is actually small, short stories from people who garden on a regular basis and different types of gardens and different types of climates. So look for that if you can.
Okay, sweet. Yep.
So this is what you do. Gardening is especially good for children. It shows children how their actions can lead to positive results while also teaching them the importance of taking care of the environment. Because Earth Day is 365. We always go, oh, it's Earth Day, April. No,
right, no, girl. Right, it's year-round, friend. Yep.
So it also, they noticed that there was one particular study that children who had exposure to green spaces had improved self-discipline, delaying gratification, inhibiting initial impulses, and boosting their concentration. What?
Absolutely true. Absolutely true.
Wow.
So the next one is moderate exercise. Gardening involves physical movement ranging from stretching, bending, and lifting to sometimes vigorous aerobic work like tilling a garden the old-fashioned way with a shovel and sweat. No, thank you. So all of these count as exercise and benefits your body and your mind. Gardening can be purposeful exercise, and you get good stuff to eat when it's over. So here's what you mentioned earlier, which, Pickett, I need you to sit up straight and listen closely. Okay. Soil, i.e. dirt, may act as an antidepressant. So just like your gut, your garden has a microbiome, and research suggests that it helps your mental and emotional well-being. In studies with mice, a friendly bacteria commonly found in soil activated brain cells to produce more serotonin and altered the mice's behavior in a way similar to antidepressants. Mice also that were fed the bacteria were able to complete complex mazes twice as fast and show less anxiety. Bacteria in dirt has proven to boost the immune system in humans. So spending time in the garden is an easy way to boost your physical and mental well-being. So don't be afraid to get your hands dirty.
Yep. All facts. Those is all facts that you just read. All facts. Yep.
Word up. So before we get out of here, Jazz, tell the people how they can get in touch with you.
You guys can visit me on my website, www.ithrivedayton.com. That's ITHRIVE Dayton, DAYTON.com. I'm on Instagram, iThriveDayton, Facebook, iThriveDayton. I tend to do a lot of vendor events throughout the city. I host quarterly plant and sip workshops where I teach pretty much the community how to garden. We have a couple of drinks of wine and teach them how to garden. So be on the lookout for that. And then I tend to do a lot of stuff throughout the year, so ain't no telling where y'all gonna see me next. Just follow me or something.
Word up. But thank you again so much for being a part of this episode. And like I said, we're definitely gonna have you back in March.
Sweet, I'd love to.
Word up. And for people checking us out, you can find us wherever you find your favorite podcast. We're on all social media, Facebook, IG, Twitter, TikTok. Or if you have any questions, comments, concerns, you can email us at flywithusla@gmail.com. I'm your boy Picket Fence.
I'm your girl Lady Bounce. And
we out of here.
We out of here.
Peace.